Joined here by Congressman Mike Waltz of the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, every committee that could be dealing right now with the Israel-Hamas crisis, the war, you're sitting on right now. What's your view of things?
Well, look, this is, at the end of the day, this administration has an Iran problem. It has an Iran policy problem. It has been obsessed with trying to re-enter into the JCPOA, the Iran Deal 2.0, and that means it has made concession after concession after concession. And those of us, I'm a 27-year Green Beret. I've fought these guys all over the world. I know when they smell weakness, they see opportunity. When they're faced with strength and resolve, they back down. And right now, they are on the march because they smell weakness in this White House.
So how do you move forward from here, especially now that you have a speaker in the House? How do you best support Israel at this point?
Well, Speaker Johnson is on both armed services. He literally sits right next to me the last 4 years, and then also on judiciary. So he has a great balance of issues that he's been diving into over the years. He knows that we cannot allow this administration to keep providing concessions to Iran. He knows that Israel, who we absolutely should support steadfastly, even if they are fantastically successful against Hamas and Hezbollah, that you're essentially be mowing the grass. It's going to grow back as long as Iran is flush with cash to keep feeding and funding its proxies. So we have to go after the head of the snake. That means forcing the administration to enforce sanctions. That means putting them in law so that they can't turn a blind eye. And that's exactly what we'll be working on both foreign affairs and armed services.
It's going to take a long time to sort out exactly what went wrong on October the 7th. On the Israeli side, we've seen early reports that intelligence sensed something was wrong, nothing was really implemented. On the American side, you sense a similar problem. The intelligence, you feel, at least according to your comments on a panel discussion earlier today, the intelligence was there. What happened further up the chain? Not really sure. What's your view?
Well, look, we knew that we had a series of meetings with a number of terrorist leaders, both Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi militias, the Iranian Quds Force and IRGC handlers. They were happening in Lebanon. They were rehearsing. The Ayatollah was amping up his rhetoric, talking about a ring of fire around Israel. And we knew that they hated and saw as existential the prospect of more Abraham Accords or Saudi-Israel normalization. So, there might have been some tactical things that we missed. Perhaps Hamas had some new encrypted communications, but we knew all the training, all the funding, all the weapons, and all the rehearsals were being provided. My suspicion, and this is what we'll be driving at from an oversight standpoint, is that we were collecting indicators, but when you have an administration that was so wedded to an Iran deal and a balanced Middle East with Iran and Israel, when you have an administration that is infiltrated with Rob Malley, their lead negotiator, who's now under investigation and has security clearance pulled, and his whole ring of associates that are Iran apologists in key positions around the government, I think you had a real policy problem and a policy maker problem, not necessarily a massive collection gap. We'll still have to prove that theory to be true, but as someone who has fought all over the world and a veteran of D.C., sometimes I think D.C.'s tougher than fighting all around the world. That's what I think happened.
The window to achieve Saudi-Israeli normalization wasn't all that big to begin with. Now, with this war going on, it's narrowed down, and the parameters surrounding normalization now have become even more complicated. Do you feel normalization can be salvaged? Do you feel it's worthwhile to salvage it?
Look, the brilliance of how the Trump administration approached the Abraham Accords was they sat the Palestinian issue off to the side. They found common ground, whether it was Bahrain and Israel, whether it was UAE and Israel, Morocco and Israel, and said, we're going to deal with the Palestinian issue later. I think where the administration made a bit of a fundamental error was putting it front and center between Saudi and Israel normalization. And what does that do? That gives the Palestinians a vehicle to interfere, to blow up the deal, which is exactly what Hamas and their Iranian backers did. Look, I think as long as MBS is there, I think as long as Bibi Netanyahu is there, they both made it a priority. I think it's on pause for the foreseeable future. It's going to be a lot harder, but I do still think it's achievable.
The day after Gaza, the day after Hamas, there's a lot of just talk right now, a lot of questioning about who governs that area. What do you do the day after Hamas is eliminated? There's no clear answer, not even close to it at this point. Any potential solutions in your mind for where to go?
I mean, I hesitate to say this, but perhaps the UN. I think the Gulf Arabs could step in a big way in terms of funding. I think Egypt, we should be pressing Sisi who has a tremendous amount of influence. But everybody in the Middle East likes to point to the Palestinian problem. Nobody wants to actually help deal with it. But I do think that's something the Israeli War Cabinet has to be thinking through. We know how to tear down terrorist infrastructure. We've done it with Al Qaeda. We've done it with ISIS. We've done it even with cartels in Colombia, and we can do it with Hamas. It's going to be hard, long, bloody, and difficult. We do a terrible job of winning the peace afterwards. And whether that is, Israel will essentially have to help govern, at least perhaps the northern parts. We'll see. That is the $64 million question. But I think it could be some combination of those entities, all of whom are going to be desperate for the fighting to stop. And while right now they're incredibly reluctant to get involved, I do think, as we get into a long, bloody slog, which we should be clear it's going to be, that they'll increasingly want to be part of the solution. The issue is, will Biden step up to the situation and put a finger in their chest and say, fine, quit complaining, pull out your checkbooks and pull out your political capital and your international capital and help and be part of this solution? We'll see.
Uncertain days ahead. We hope we can turn to you for your insight. Congressman Mike Waltz, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure.